You've just recreated the worst possible nightmare.
Fiscal year 1999, 2.3 trillion missing. Fiscal year 2000, 1.1 trillion missing.
You'd think with 2 mortgages out, the repo guy's staking out my car, my job on the line.
Even when we win, it's just a matter of time before we give it all back.
There are serious financial management problems.
Are we potentially at a point where we might actually lose the financial system as we know it?
And you're standing there and you suddenly realize, hey, I'm still here.
Don't be a victim of the current economic crisis. Turn the tables on the banksters, collection agencies, and other crooks. You can stress out trying to find a way to make the minimum payments every month, or you can get them to pay you. Join hosts Jesse and Dave every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time for What Lies in Your Debt, right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Where information never sleeps.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to R.O.A.M Radio. I'm your host, Joe Kiernan, joining us, co-hosted by my man, Dr. J. John Andy Ilias on the West Coast. How are you tonight, Dr. J?
Always good, Joe, always.
That's true, you are always good. I got to figure out your special tricks on that. You're a pretty clever guy. Everything good out there, buddy?
It truly is.
I should tell you, I really shouldn't have to tell you, just to everyone out there, I want to thank everyone for the great feedback we had for last week's show with Mr. Gary Travis and Mr. Chris Bledsoe. The feedback was fantastic, and a lot of it had made it back to our guests, and they were very enthused, and we're hoping to bring them back for the second part of all of that. Believe it or not, there might even be a third part.
Absolutely. You know
these guys
why,
have
Joe?
so much to say.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. They have so much to say. I don't think if we had them here 10 times we can get the full story out. You know, it's just that much information.
No, it was such an abbreviated show we had. We were trying to introduce to everyone who's unaware of these two gentlemen. We were trying to introduce them and give them the basic idea of the story. Unfortunately, a 2-hour show for really good guests goes by really quick, and it's a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, but it keeps us wanting more. I surely would love to have them back, and we will. They have very intriguing things to say, and that's what we do here on Researchers on a Mission Radio. We're trying to bring the latest breaking researching news to the forefront in hopes of encouraging or inspiring some research work done by yourselves at home. With that said, John, we have a good show tonight. Before we get into that, I'd like to remind everyone that this is the world's largest listener-supported radio, and everyone here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, we greatly appreciate all donations you could find on the freedomslips.com homepage. You could find it at the bottom, or rather on the page with the chat room, and I'd like to encourage everyone to join in the chat room as well. Find a lot of very interesting people and many good discussions on a whole variety of topics. When you're looking around, and please get yourself familiar with the website. I'd like you all to take a look at the seed kit that we have here, the seed bank kit. It comes with just under 35,000 non-GMO seeds, and it comes with basically a whole entire kit you would need for bugging out or being prepared for whatever is impending. It teaches you everything you'll need for agriculture and recultivation, everything you'll need for survival, and of course they throw in the good old-fashioned Boy Scout manual, which with duct tape and that, you could really accomplish just about anything in the world. And with that said, John, would you like to let us know who we're going to be having on the show later on?
Absolutely. We are going to be speaking to Derrick Robertson, who runs the coalition for, or actually the freedom of the coalition for covert harassment and surveillance, which is the American version of UCASH, which if everyone's out there is listening recalls when we had Melanie Richin on, she worked at the European Coalition Against Covert Harassment. And he's going to be talking about some very important stuff, everything from mind control, nanotechnology, possibly even Morgellons, and so much more. These are topics that really in America we're not very well aware of.
You know, they're topics not spoken on the mainstream, that's for sure. And when they are, they're easily dismissed as a joke, or ridicule comes with it. It's
quicker than UFOs, sadly.
Isn't that the truth though?
It is.
You know, it scares the pants off of doctors, but it's easier for them to dismiss it and pass the buck, if you will. Let's see here. I'm going to.
You know, like like Morgellons. You know, Morgellons is a fairly new disease. It's very painful. Colored fibers are coming out of these blisters, and what can it be? A lot of people speculate, who've been investigating, that it's nanotechnology, but nonetheless, I mean, it is just really, really bizarre, and there's no correlation of how these things are spread. Are they purposely put in certain people? I really don't know, but the point is some new phenomena is happening.
It's very true. Something really is happening, and before we have Mr. Robinson joining us, he'll be getting with us shortly. When Mr. Robinson does join us, we're going to be discussing a lot of these topics. And before we get into that, John, we have a gentleman that's going to be joining us here momentarily, and we're going to try to quickly touch on the topic of a Miss Mariam Carey. For everyone out there who's unaware of this new name, Mariam Carey, this is the name of the 34-year-old female this week that was shot and killed in her car on Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington. In regards to the control she may have or may not have been under, whether it was her own regarding pharmaceuticals or some other type of control. Obviously, we don't know, but we're going to try to get to that. John, you know, when we spoke with Mr. Derrick Robinson, he informed us of his colleague, friend, Mr. Tarek.
Yes.
And we do have Mr. Tarek here on the line with us, and we're going to attempt to bring him in here. Hello, Tarek, are you with us?
I am. How are you tonight?
Oh, excellent, excellent. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much for joining us. We understand you are by trade, you're a pharmaceutical technician. Is this correct?
Yes, I'm a certified pharmacy technician, yes.
Okay. And are you familiar with this most recent topic? With
I am.
Mariam Carey and the prescriptions that she, whether she was prescribed them or not, they were found in her living quarters?
Yes, she was prescribed risperidone, which is antipsychotic for bipolar and paranoid schizophrenia. She's also on escitalopram, which is Lexapro, which is prescribed for depression. That's what was listed in the news article, from what I understand.
And what would be a fair assessment of consuming these medications together, or what's the pluses and minuses of just taking them all individually?
Well, you have to understand that a lot of the side effects of, especially of an antipsychotic and antidepressant, are the symptoms of what a targeted individual goes through. They cause confusion, dizziness, blurred vision, psychotic episodes. They cause change in mood and behavior. They cause fatigue, muscle aches, soreness, problems with eyes. So a lot of these symptoms or side effects are symptoms of targeted individuals that are not taking medications. So when a person is actually a targeted individual and they're experiencing those symptoms and also the medications give those same side effects, and you have somebody that is using technologies that are, just goes back to MK Ultra. Basically, it's a new high-tech version. It's a way for the government to plausibly give an explanation as to why her behavior was changed because of the medications. The medications definitely do cause psychotic episodes. Again, they can cause confusion, also hallucinations, but also the technologies that are being used are also being used for the same purpose. So if you really think about it, it's almost like it's intent to manufacture a synthetically created disease state.
Yeah, from what I was understanding and or trying to understand, a lot of these symptoms, if you will, for control, have very similar descriptions to what you were just saying. Just when I look down everything that qualifies under the possibility of some sort of harassment or covert surveillance happening, a lot of these symptoms, someone might say, if I were to utter 3 or 4 of these off, I'm sure the first person would say, maybe you're a little stressed out, or maybe you need some rest. You might not be thinking so clearly. Because if I get this right, I believe a lot of it is confusion. I know there's an overwhelming fatigue that sometimes comes abruptly, and lots of pains and uncomfortableness and confusion.
Absolutely.
As we all know, in today's day and age, when you see a doctor for a lot of ailments, especially these ailments, they're either very quick to categorize them all into whatever's the top of the chart lately, or they just write you a couple prescriptions and we'll see how you're doing. And
the average length of time a doctor spends with a patient is no more than 15 minutes. You usually wait about 45 minutes to see the doctor, and then when you're in the examination room, you spend about 15 minutes. And when you describe your symptoms and as to why you're there for the doctor visit in the first place, you describe the symptoms. They then give a general diagnosis, and it takes about 15 minutes, write a prescription, and then you're on a lifetime of medication.
All right. I find the 15 minutes very insulting. And actually, for my own personal records, I'd say 15 minutes is on the high side. I usually speak to a few nurses, and we go through everything, and the doctor comes in and asks you about 4 or 5 questions. He writes you a couple prescriptions, and off you go.
Exactly. It's funny because I have a patient that's 9 years old and was just prescribed 3 antipsychotic medications,
wow.
1 antidepressant, and 2 ADHD medications.
Wow.
That's 9 years old. And then I have another patient that's 5 years old that the doctor prescribed an antidepressant and an ADHD medication.
At 5 years old?
5 years old. So we're seeing that this is becoming more prevalent in children, that you're seeing more prescriptions. And both of those patients were on state Medicaid. They were on Washington state Medicaid. So, there's some people can theorize, or they can read into that as they want. But when you start with a child at 5 years old, and because, here we're living in an age of microwave technology with Wi-Fi, and everybody has the cell phones. So your attention span, in fact, Dr. Barry Trower even stated that a school in South Africa, one of his colleagues went to work in this school in South Africa, and before they put up these antennas on top of the school, the children were not on any medications. After they put the antennas up on top of the school, every child was put on ADHD medications.
Wow.
So
if you don't mind me asking, the 10-year-old or the 5-year-old, what besides the antipsychotics, what ADHD medications were they put on? Ritalin or Adderall?
They were put on Adderall and Vyvanse.
Wow. I can't imagine giving anyone 10 years old or younger Adderall, never mind along with antipsychotics.
Yeah. So the technologies that are out there that are being used, I mean, if you really think about it, they're being used for, again, intent to manufacture a synthetically created disease state. So that, when people do get monitored, just like what happened with Miriam, she was stating that she was being monitored by the president, and microwave auditory effect. If you ever look up microwave auditory effect, there's actually research studies and that has been established and been proven and documented that the microwave auditory effect is congruent to schizophrenia. So when they actually did the comparisons, they're saying that microwave auditory effect is basically schizophrenia. They're mimicking the same exact symptoms. So, and it's already been proven and documented. So when somebody says that they're hearing voices, they really are hearing voices, and they feel the vibrations from the microwave auditory effect. It's been documented.
And we all know, one of the things that is most fearful and taboo, and I understand it, is, we're very reluctant to tell anyone that you might be hearing voices in your head, because
absolutely, but
you could be thrown away for that.
That's been proven since the 40s.
Yeah.
But that's been proven since World War II, when they figured out that they could deliver sound through microwaves, and they used to have soldiers keep warm by a big microwave antenna, and they were able to deliver sound through a microphone. And when they found out that they could do that, it was on an extremely low frequency. That's how they started with sending subliminal messages and so on and so forth. They were able to communicate with people. Yeah, so it's been around for a long time.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's misused, as a lot of controlled projects are. Tarek, if you don't mind, I have someone here calling from area code 513. Hello, are you with us?
Okay, this is Derrick. Excuse me, this is Derrick.
I'm very happy you could join us. Tarek, John, we have Mr. Derrick Robinson here on the line. Mr. Robinson, I'm sorry to keep you holding. How are you? How are you tonight?
Okay, good. I was just enjoying your conversation with Tarek.
Yes, he's on a roll. He is on a roll.
This is all very important stuff that the world needs to hear, and I'm glad we're all here today.
And Derrick, anything that you could add to this conversation would be greatly appreciated. But Tarek, it was very clear from day one. I remember watching this story with Mariam Carey when it originally broke, and they were just clearing the Capitol, and it wasn't very long at all. Actually, I had known on the news that she was claiming that she was being followed by members of the government before I heard she was even killed. And then as soon as it all broke that she was killed, then it was, she was being followed by the president, and all this other stuff was going on. And there's a whole series of events that are very shady. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that street besides the White Houses. That's Torah Central. There's those streets are full of people every single day of the year. The National Mall is right down the street. The Capitol's there. The White House. I mean,
I have a question to pose to everybody in this panel. Do you think she went on this tirade because maybe she was a federal worker, or no, she was a dental hygienist that maybe was impacted by the shutdown, or B, was she mind controlled maybe?
Derrick, you want to answer that?
Okay, well, looking at her history, she has a excuse me, she was taken in for observation, I believe it was late last year, and from the medications that she received, it looks like she might have been diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic, in which case she might have reported hearing voices, which might be consistent with her claim that she was a prophet. And she might have been hearing voices telling her that Barack Obama was going to shut down Stamford, Connecticut, in which case she felt that, I'm just kind of projecting on my part, that she was receiving the voice-to-skull technology. And if you're not aware of that these technologies exist, they can be telling you all kinds of things, and you can be believing them and believing yourself to be a prophet or what have you. And maybe she went down there to D.C. to try to negotiate somehow, probably at the direction of these voices, to try to negotiate with Barack Obama. So it's probably a combination. Her behavior, from my estimation, is a combination of perhaps the drugs she was on, and then perhaps some type of microwave technologies.
You know, this sounds strikingly similar to Aaron Alexis, because he said he was being harassed through microwaves, which led him to the attack on the Naval Yard.
Right. I believe it's very much related. They were both the same age, coincidentally, and they were both had some dealings with the mental health industry. So I think that this is very prevalent in our society. Many people do not realize that they are being targeted with these type of technologies, that the voices can be placed in someone's head, that they could hear the voice of other people that they don't know. And the thing about what's interesting about this case, especially with Aaron Alexis, is that I received a correspondence with the person who, after hearing about what Aaron Alexis did and the reasons that he was doing what he was doing, presumably because of that he had to end the torment was one of the reasons he cited, and also that, well, a couple other reasons that I can't think of right now, but because of his actions and because of the microwave technologies that were affecting him, there are several people that contacted us that realized that they too had been afflicted with microwave technologies. And this guy was exclaiming, "Oh my God, this is what was happening to me. The things that are happening to Aaron Alexis is also something, what was happening to him." And also, we have reports of people who have been hearing about the microwave technologies, who have been hearing about the voices that people were receiving, and did not know whether to believe it or not. But then after hearing about Aaron Alexis, they then became believers. So this particular case, has brought out a lot of attention. I believe that we will hear more from people who are also afflicted with these technologies, and that a lot more information is going to be coming forth about this situation, and hopefully all of this will come tumbling into the light about exactly how many people are being targeted covertly by these technologies in the very near future.
Now, if these people that we're discussing, let's say Miss Mariam Carey, if she was having outside control, if she was being manipulated in any degree, hopefully it's, I don't even want to say hopefully, because it appalls me either way, but would it be a control from inside our government, or would it be a foreign government trying to manipulate our citizens?
Well, my opinion is that it will probably be our own government. Although it is possible that she could be controlled from outside, that is a possibility. But from what we have observed, and the research is available on the internet, the military intelligence, CIA agencies, the CIA, NSA, all of these agencies have been in research of technologies of human control, technologies through drugs, electromagnetics, or what have you. The ability to control a human being, they have been in search of this since the 50s. And they basically set out, even from the inception of the CIA and NSA, to find ways to do this. So it is our own government that has had this goal, and they have well achieved it by now, since for over nearly 60 years of covertly trying to find some way to control a human being without them being aware that they're being controlled, and to coerce this person to do things even against their own reasonings of self-preservation. So all of this has been stated in their goals from the very outset when they started Project MK Ultra, from the very beginning, to find ways to absolutely control a human being. So from what we have seen, the reports that we got from individuals, even some of my own experiences, they have pretty much achieved that objective.
That's,
and in my opinion, and also in my experience, remember also universities, the research departments receive lots of research funding from the Department of Defense. They also receive a lot of funding from the Department of Homeland Security. And there's a lot of research that has been already made aware to the public through great media sources like 60 Minutes, through Washington Times, through through the Wormhole with Morgan Freeman, the Science Channel. They work with the neuroscience technology departments. They also, the research departments, bioengineering, medical research, and so they receive a lot of funding. In fact, the University of California, Irvine received $4 million from the Army to develop synthetic telepathy to be used on the soldiers. So you have these research departments in major universities, and in fact, my next-door neighbor, and through my experience being a targeted individual myself, my neighbor works for the Social Research Development Group at the University of Washington. And her website and what she does, it even states that they monitor children, they monitor adults, and it became crystal clear on how I became aware of who I was being targeted by. But it's all done for research. A lot of it's done for research. A lot of it's done for voyeuristic purposes as well when you have these universities involved, especially when you have somebody that is just a normal average person that is not of any importance, and maybe, if they're just a regular citizen, private citizen, they're not going to be targeted usually by the government. They'll be targeted for research purposes by a university. And a lot of times they'll target them if they know the person, a lot of times they involve people that you end up knowing. So they'll do it for voyeuristic reasons. Employers have been using these technologies. I had a conversation with a patient that even knew about these technologies. He worked for the city of Seattle. He knew about the technologies being used for monitoring their employees, not just for performance reasons, as like a tool to basically better a working environment, but also for invasion of privacy. So it's not just the governments. And remember, MK Ultra, it was not just MK Ultra with mind control, but it was also the radiation experimentation. Over 4,000 radiation experiments happened at universities, hospitals, doctors, military bases around the country. And MK Ultra fit right into that. They used the radiation and the mind control at the same time. So in my opinion, and through my experiences and through the people that I have that have made themselves aware to me that are involved involved with these technologies, and with the people that I have been reporting to in the federal law enforcement community, it's very crystal clear that the universities are involved in a lot of these situations. Harvard Medical Research is involved with the FAST programs through the Department of Homeland Security, which is like the Minority Report, where they can actually read your mind real time. So you actually are able to be communicated to not only with voice to skull, but they can do it covertly to monitor you, so they can predict if you are planning on committing a criminal act. If you read about the fast technologies, it even states that the Harvard Medical Research Group is involved at the Harvard School. So these research departments are definitely involved.
Well, that's rather shameful in my opinion. But however, it has been going on for a long time. It appears that it's not just here. Go ahead, John. What were you saying there, pal?
Documents from the CIA released from the Freedom Information Act have shown that this has been an ongoing thing, and they've been doing this for 50 plus years.
Yes.
That's sad.
Now, when you say 50 plus years, you have to remember that when these medications have come out, and this is from a pharmaceutical standpoint. Now, when a person is selected, and remember these patents on these medications are for 20 years. So this has been around for over 50 years. So a medication called Zyprexa or olanzapine just went generic. Zyprexa ended its 20-year patent. When they did get, when they were doing their clinical trials, you have to think about it from this standpoint. The people that they chose for the clinical trials were basically, they were diagnosed with, having symptoms of schizophrenia. So since these technologies have been used for so long, when they go in for the clinical trials, this is where the pharmaceutical companies come in. You have a person that is being basically the guinea pig for the clinical trials for the new medication that's coming out. So when they're most likely being targeted at the same time. So when they're taking the medications, they can report the side effects of the medications. And since many of the symptoms of that targeted individuals experience are the same as the side effects of the medications, you can assume that the person that is a part of the clinical trial is actually being targeted at the same time to report those side effects, so that the government and mental health facilities and also the medical field have a way to say, and law enforcement, if somebody does have a psychotic episode, they have a plausible way of explaining, well, it was the medications that caused this person, just like they keep on reporting that these people were mentally ill, they were put on medications, these medications caused these side effects, so on and so forth. So when you really think about it, if somebody doesn't have a mental illness and they go in and they're stating that they have all these side effects or, these symptoms, I have sore, tired muscles, I have blurred vision, I'm dizzy, I'm often confused, and you just say it like that, the doctor is not going to say that you have paranoid schizophrenia. He's going to look for something else until you say the word you're hearing voices. But if you're giving the doctor all of those side effects that are the symptoms, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Also, when the radiation hearings happened back in the 90s under President Clinton, one of the things that was brought forth was that there were about 500,000 people who had been experimented on from 1949 to about 1969. 500,000 people who had been non-consensually experimented on by the government, including instances like children who had had pure radiation poured into their cereal, and they were told it was a cold medicine. And there were other instances. There were prisoners actually experimented on. Mental patients are also in the front lines of non-consensual experimentation. There was actually a lawsuit brought back in the 90s from prisoners in Utah who were being experimented on. The lawsuit was dismissed, but they were claiming symptoms similar to ours, that they were being mentally controlled by these technologies. It was dismissed as delusional, as many of our cases are presently. Until there's a general awareness that these technologies exist, that is what happens to most of our cases that are presented in court. So we are trying to, as an organization, alert the public to that these technologies are out there, that they're being used, and that more and more people are being affected, that more people are being captured into the system daily. And it's been exhibited by some of these shooters that are starting to pop up, such as Maren Carey and Alexis. So as we raise the awareness, hopefully people will start to find this and start to ask questions. We're hoping for congressional action. We're hoping for public hearings, and that all of this will be exposed so that people who are really affected by these technologies, and they're in millions, according to Stuart Swirlo, who was a recent guest at our podcast. He was actually a mind control victim, mind control technology victim, who was actually captured when he was 13 years old and brought into the experimental facilities back in the 70s. And he told us during the podcast that they told him that he was indoctrinated with all kinds of information. And one of the things that they said, that 12 to 15% of the population was being targeted by these technologies. So that there are a lot of people in the U.S. that works out to be like 36 to 45 million people are being targeted without their knowledge. So we have lots of people, millions of them, who are affected and apparently do not realize it, according to his numbers there. So we have a lot of information to get to reach a lot of people. So hopefully some of these atrocities will be prevented.
Wow. Now, with Miss Miriam Carey, I don't really know all the specifics because I've heard several different stories, but correct me if I'm wrong. I believe she was from Connecticut, wasn't she?
Stamford, Connecticut.
Stamford. Was she living in Connecticut and visiting D.C.?
She was originally, from what I understand, from Bedford-Stuyvesant in New York City. That was where she was brought up. She recently moved to Connecticut, and so she drove from Connecticut all the way down to D.C.
Wow. With a child in the car.
With a child. So, in my opinion, things like that that happen usually happen in our community at the direction of voices, or at least subliminal suggestion to do certain things. And because we have a community of people that are aware of these technologies, we do have a chance to reject ideas that are illogical, because we know that these technologies exist. But for the general public who are unaware that these abilities are out there, they can be influenced to do all kinds of things, and they start to believe things that they're a prophet because they're told that they are, or told to believe certain things that the voices tell them. And if they don't have a knowledge base of where these voices are coming from, they can be coerced to doing all kinds of atrocities. And there was one example of someone in our community that nearly killed his father because he heard the voices that told him that his father was a terrorist and that he needed to be killed, and they could not do it. So somehow he was able to convince him of this, and he nearly killed his father, stabbing him 3 times in the heart. So, but then later on, he found a community, and he is trying to get all of that reversed from his record. But these technologies are pretty rampant and prevalent in our society, and we need, it's very important, it's vital that people become aware that these things exist.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Obama actually read a remark and a statement at the Holocaust Museum last year, and he signed an executive order. And his executive order stated that he was targeting high-tech companies that are using technology to monitor, target, track, torture for killing and other grave human rights abuses. So he's actually acknowledged that these technologies are in existence and are being used. And that was a very, very big deal for the community, because when he acknowledged this, he also formed the Atrocity Committee. And he stated that he wanted Homeland Security, the military, every government channel, law enforcement, to report anything like this to himself or to the Atrocity Committee, so that they can prevent future atrocities. So he's definitely aware of it. He was made aware of it through the Bioethics Committee. He's stating that in his executive order. You can read about it. He spoke at, I think it was April 12th of 2012. So he's very well aware of it, and for him to sign an executive order. And he also made everybody aware that there's companies that are operating systems that he calls them digital guns for hire, that operate systems for the same reason: targeting, monitoring, torturing for killing and other grave human rights abuses. So it's very important that people understand that he knows and he's aware, and this needs to come to an end. You can look it up if you want to. You can just read about the Holocaust statements, and you can type into Google Atrocity Committee and the Obama executive order. So it's definitely been acknowledged. It's not something that has not been acknowledged. It's just that everybody's been sweeping it under the carpet.
Tarek,
I'd like to mention briefly that that one of the things that human rights groups and civil rights groups in this country is striving to attain is a human rights commission for the United States. And this has been presented before Barack Obama. And the United Nations is in the process of analyzing the United States in terms of their human rights record. And they do have some quibbles with the United States. For instance, our involuntary commitment system is being challenged by the United Nations. And the United Nations actually reviewed our civil rights, our human rights record, and they had some recommendations for the U.S. And one of them was that they would establish a human rights commission. And we are hoping that there were a lot of civil rights, human rights, peace activist groups that supported that recommendation. And we're hoping that Barack Obama does follow through with that. If so, that would allow us then to have some place to file complaints about mind control technology abuse that is happening to so many people.
Tarek, when did you reach the point that you were starting to become aware that you were having symptoms, and at what point did you begin to recognize that it wasn't chalked up to just being fatigued and exhausted and just getting old? It was in 2010?
2010.
And what was
February.
it? Was there a moment that happened that was a game changer for you? Or was it a slow process to come to the realization?
Well, once I was working in a pharmacy, and I had resigned. And when I resigned, the two pharmacists that I had worked for made me sign a contractual agreement. And the contractual agreement was very, very unusual, because it stated that I couldn't sue them for fraudulent activity. I couldn't sue them for emotional distress. I couldn't sue them for invasion of privacy. I couldn't sue them for sexual harassment. I couldn't sue them for defamation of character or there's a number of things that they had said that I couldn't sue them for. It was a 6-page contract. They stated that if I even mentioned anything about the contract, that they could sue me. And then they said that if I went back to work for any competing pharmacy, they would sue me for $100,000. So at that point, I realized that, because when I had left the pharmacy, it became very stressful, because the two pharmacists were not amicable basis. They hated each other. In fact, one of them, they couldn't work. They had to alternate weeks. One worked 1 week because they couldn't work together. So it became apparent to me that they made me sign this contract because basically they thought that I had known that they were involved. And so I had submitted that as evidence. And when you think about it, for somebody to say you can't sue for fraud, you go back to the government would say, who are you kidding? If you're committing fraud, we're going to start an investigation. Just because you're telling an employee that they couldn't sue you for fraud doesn't mean that you're not going to be investigated for it. So contractual agreement, then some other circumstances that had happened. I had reported some individuals. It's a long story, but I had reported these individuals to a federal law enforcement officer. And after I reported these individuals, a few days later, I get a knock on my front door, and it is from a Seattle police officer. And he is not willing to stay at the front door. He goes out to the middle of the front yard and says, "Do you need a mental health review?" And then walked away. It was to be intimidating. So this is after I had blown the whistle. So basically, he was trying to, and he was obviously eavesdropping and listening and involved in the targeting. So he was trying to intimidate me to not continue to say anything. So then a few days later, I got a knock at my back door, and how these young ladies found out that I even had a back door was very suspicious, according to what the federal law enforcement officer stated. So it was very suspicious, came to my back door, and they were from King County Mental Health. And so I stopped before they even had the opportunity to give their spiel. I asked them for their business card, and I told them that there's an investigation. You'll be getting a phone call. I made my phone call to the federal law enforcement officer. He made the phone call to King County Mental Health and said, "You will no longer be able to approach anyone in this manner. It was, definitely, not correct. You're not supposed to be, doing this. It's intimidation and it's illegal. There is an investigation for the uses of these technologies for the sole purpose of getting somebody a diagnosis for a mental illness." So my situation is definitely a different situation. So each person has made themselves aware. So if you really think about it, it's racketeering. So you have the Seattle Police Department along with King County Mental Health, along with 2 pharmacy owners and some other pharmacists involved. So now you have basically racketeering going on. So they've all made themselves aware to me. So it's been very interesting.
It sounds overwhelmingly interesting. And Mr. Robinson, if I could get you to add on this, besides Tarek, I'm sure he's met quite a few people like himself as well. What is your organization? What are you planning to do with it in correspondence to having all of these people like Tarek come together? Are we going to try to organize everyone together and bring an awareness? Or are you having any future meetings coming up or anything available for the public?
Okay, well, I can tell you a couple of things that we're working on, several projects. For one, we are working with the United Nations, a gentleman by the name of Juan Mendez, who is the UN Rapporteur on Torture. We actually had a meeting with him in Washington, D.C. in early August to present to him our complaints about mind control technologies that were happening that we feel is coming from our government. There were a couple other individuals there who were representing governments outside the United States. Japan was represented also. A guy from Japan, he was the director and chairman of the board of one of the victim groups in Japan. He was there, and then also someone from Malaysia, and where the same thing is happening there. There are many other countries also that are also experiencing, we hear from victims from countries all over the world who are experiencing similar situations. And so we decided to come together and meet with Mr. Mendez to present to him our information, our complaints about the mind control technologies that were being perpetrated against us here in the U.S. and also worldwide. What he will do once he receives these complaints is he will then advocate for the victims in each of their countries. So throughout our network, we've informed people of this. And so there's a site, a United Nations site, where people can go and they can fill out this form, attach it to an email, and send it to Mr. Mendez for action. That's one of the most important projects that we have going on right now, because this is really the only place. There really isn't a place within our national system where we can file a complaint or log any type of report about mind control technologies. We would just be dismissed as delusional. So we do have information. We have evidence. We have U.S. documents. We have testimonies. We have all this that we can present to Mr. Mendez for them to investigate and for them to go back to these governments and ask them what's going on here and for their reply.
Sorry, gentlemen, we have to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a few minutes after the break. Guess if you stick around with us, listeners, you'll be back at freedomslips.com in just a few moments. Welcome back to Researchers on a Mission Radio. Revolution, freedomslips.com. I'm your host, Joe Kiernan. We got my main man, Dr. J on the West Coast. We have a couple very interesting people joining us tonight. We are discussing some very hot topics, and they are both from the Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance. We could find their website at www.freedomfchs.com. And John, are you here with us still?
Absolutely, always.
I had to make sure you're here, and I'm sure you're doing just fine, and you're doing great. I know.
That's
Before
right.
we get back to it, I do have to remind everyone we are the world's largest listener-supported radio station. You could find us here on freedomslips.com. I'd like you to look around, get yourself familiar with the website. Please make your way to the donation button, and please make yourself a donation. Just remember, we would like to have this continue. We would like to see it grow. These things do take money. We're not trying to make a giant profit here. We're just trying to run the station as it will. We do need small funds to keep all the hosts on the servers and keep it going and keep this chat room going, and we can continue on with these hot topics and interesting guests, and we could really get some modern day research going on that's not filtered out by the mainstream world. You could make yourself familiar with the site, and you'll also see the seed pack that's offered when you make a $100 donation. You'll get just over 34,000 non-GMO seeds for all the vegetables and herbs and plants you will need to restart and survive if need be. These seeds will last 15 years in the refrigerator, up to 25 years in the freezer. It will teach you everything you need to know about filtering water, agriculture, harvesting. You really don't need to know too much, folks, about how to repopulate. That stuff we can figure out on our own. But for the survival factors alone, you'll find everything you need in here. And when all else fails, please refer to the Boy Scout manual included, and it will get you where you need to be. This day and age we're coming to, these seed banks and breakout kits are not just for the extreme buggers out there in the world. These are for people that are just a little more cunning and a little more observant with the world. And being prepared is definitely the first step, and knowledge is the second. If we have them both, we will succeed. John, we
Yes.
have interesting guests and a fantastic topic going, as usual.
That's right.
I can't believe the first hour went by that fast.
Can you believe it? I know.
I really
it
can't.
always happens.
I really can't. And I was very happy that Mr. Robinson was able to join us a little earlier in the show. We were afraid we weren't going to have him till about a half hour into the show or possibly later. And he made that happen for us. All right. Derrick and Mr. Tarek, are you still with us?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, from our counterparts in the European nations, when John and I had spoken with Miss Melanie Vrichin, she
and
had let
Dr. Ronnie Kildare.
Absolutely, but Ms. Vrichin was just informing me recently that they were about to go before the European committee and to try to put an end to this against the civil practices that are involved, and they're pushing forward over there, and they have a whole other system of government than we have, of course. Unfortunately, as I've been finding out lately, as it's been growing, our government really seems to be up to a lot more than what I initially suspected, and I thought my suspicions were already high. John, do you recall when we were formally speaking on these topics that there was a discussion brought up about the use of these microwave towers that were supposedly decommissioned 25, 30 years ago from our government. And there was a lot of speculation that these towers that are no longer in use, sometimes partial, the higher part of the tower, or in some cases the entire tower, are not shut down. They're still fully operational. And it really blows my mind because, as I found out, I have one of these towers just about 30 miles away from here. And, these are towers that are supposed to be down and not functional. But there's quite a few people saying that there's a direct correspondence with these towers and the manipulation going on. Between Mr. Robinson and Tarek, can either of you speak on any of the discussions related to these towers that are supposed to be decommissioned?
Okay, the decommissioned where in the U.S.?
Yes.
Okay, and what kind of towers are these?
No worries.
You're talking about the Gwen Towers?
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, the Gwen Towers, okay. Well, supposedly these have been out of commission for, Congress defunded that project back in some years ago, and supposedly they are not in use. According to Jesse Ventura's staff and their research, they are really integral in terms of our targeting. That they're actually in use, according to him. But officially, they were defended by Congress back. I'm not exactly when, for sure, but they supposedly are not in use in terms of. They were actually what GWIN stands for Ground Wave Emergency Network, first of all, and they were supposedly erected to institute an emergency network nationwide. I believe it was only partially completed, and Congress decided not to fund them any further. And also, the Defense Department, if I remember correctly, decided to do something else technologically rather than use the GWIN towers anyway. So supposedly that project was abandoned. As far as them starting back up again, according to Jesse Ventura, they're used in our targeting. I cannot verify that, but that's what he states.
Yeah.
Well, from what I understand from the executive order and from talking to people, I go out with another member here in Seattle, and we actually pass out flyers at public events. And I ended up meeting somebody that basically admitted to being in an interaction, basically admitted to being a perpetrator. And he said that he knows all about the digital technology. So he stated digital technologies that are being used to target individuals, and he even became a bit abrupt and abrasive, and he said that these people that are being targeted are being targeted to either to commit suicide. And he thought that it was a good idea because if people didn't change their behavior, they should commit suicide. And it's not even about a behavior modification. It's a behavior modification that is necessary on the behalf of the perpetrators. So engaged this individual, and I handed him the flyer. He knew all about what was going on, and he stated this is all digital technologies. And so when you think about it, we've gone to the digital age, and with Obama stating what he stated in the executive order, he said that it's similar to cell phone technology. He said cell phone monitoring. Such technologies such as cell phone monitoring that are being used to target and torture people for killing and other grave human rights abuses. And he had basically not too long ago stated 9 tech companies, Google, Microsoft, AOL, Facebook, some other companies that are rich in all of these intelligence gathering technologies. So when you put 2 and 2 together, Google owns Motorola, they have Android technology, and Google Earth has been sued multiple times in multiple class action lawsuits for invasion of privacy. I also spoke with a Microsoft employee not too long ago that I was engaging in a conversation with him about these technologies being used, and I asked him about the synthetic telepathy. Google has a patent for synthetic telepathy, and he also stated that Google is able to see right into your home, right into your living room, into your bedroom, as crystal clear as like Street View. So when he was saying this, when you listen to the statement that Obama stated about these high-tech companies that are using these technologies to target individuals, it makes sense that you have these high-tech companies such as Google. And there's quite a few parodies. In fact, if you go to YouTube and search for Google Evil, you'll see about, and type in that exact phrase, Google Evil, you'll see a great documentation of what they own. They basically want to know everything about you for advertising purposes. So, for Obama to come out, I think we need full disclosure from Obama because of that executive order that he signed and that statement that he made, because he's saying that he knows of these companies, that there are companies that are hiring digital guns for hire that operate these systems. So it's pretty important that we ask for full disclosure, since this is, if it's being federally funded, especially at universities for research, there should be full disclosure.
The problem with full disclosure, I completely agree. We are the taxpayers. We're the ones who put them in their jobs. Their job is to govern us by the standards we live. So we're not being fully disclosed on so many things, in the name of national security is the biggest reason. But anyway, I want to switch gears real quick and talk about the freedom from covert harassment and surveillance. How did that organization start?
Okay, we started back in 2005, and it was begun by a TI who targeted an individual who lived in New York at the time, and she began by canvassing the victim forums that were around at that time, and joining everybody to unite so that we can overcome this targeting situation. So she kind of called some people from various forums and started a Yahoo forum. And this was in January of 2005. And then about a month later, someone came up with the idea of having a conference call. Instead of just writing about and talking to each other, we could actually speak to each other in real time, by telephone, in a conference setting. So we liked that idea, and that started in February of 2005. And we've been having these meetings on Saturday night ever since. And we incorporated in 2007 and took on our name and everything. And we started with about 30 people. We're now up to about 2,500.
Wow, that's quite a substantial growth. Hey, gentlemen, here in the chat room, we have a question from a Noodles 7071, and I'm going to put this out there for either of the two of you that can possibly respond. The question is: so, is there a connection with the Ian Stawicki mental patient shooting at Race Cafe on May 30th of 2012 in Seattle? Are you gentlemen familiar with this?
I am very familiar with this.
Okay, great.
It happened last year at the Cafe Racer at the University District. When I heard about this, the media had reported about it, and the media had an interview with his father. His father had stated that that his son was complaining that his memories were being stolen, and with these technologies, what they do is they provoke thought. That's how subliminals happen. So a person can actually have a thought about a childhood memory or about a personal private moment, and he had complained that his thoughts were being stolen, and he was asking for help. He went to law enforcement. He also went to mental health facilities to ask for help. All they did was tell him that, put him on medications. He used to frequent the Cafe Racer quite often. And from what I understand, in my experience, because I engaged, I talk to everybody. The best defense is to talk about what's going on. And so I had spoken to somebody at a local bar and tavern, and the bartender had said, "Oh, this is a part of a social research group. It's like a social research project," because I had been talking about this. So basically, they may have involved people at those establishments where maybe I went, or where Ian Stawicki had went, because it's hard to explain. When with community-based harassment, they may tell people certain things about a person's private life, and then they engage them, and they'll make a comment about some kind of a private event that only the targeted individual would know about. So that way the targeted individual would become agitated and accuse the person. So that way the perpetrator could then say, "You're crazy." So he used to frequent that location quite a bit. I went in and I enjoyed my time there. It was a very normal, great place at the Cafe Racer. It's a very, very calm, very low-key place to hang out. But yes, it is definitely something that I had figured out right away, and a few other people in our group here in Seattle had figured out that gentleman was actually a targeted individual. Another individual in Seattle by the name of Carolyn Pixus is actually in jail. She was a Seattle Parks and Recreation worker.
Wow.
She went and she shot her boss, and she had complained about frequencies, ringing in the ears, conspiracy based, basically, that she was hearing things at night. She was not able to sleep. So another member and I went down to the King County Jail, met with her. And when we met with her, she was pretty scared. So she said that she wanted to get out. She wanted out of the game because the people that operate these systems use this as a game. They try to see how far you can get as a targeted individual. If you can get law enforcement behind you, or if you can get an investigation going, they try to obstruct all of that process that you've actually started. So when we went and approached her attorney, and her attorney, we went in and said we had information that could prove her innocence. That's all basically what we said. And they said, never come back and never contact our client ever again. So there's a little bit of a problem there because, especially in the judicial system, that's a big problem, because if you have evidence that you can present that can prove her innocence and it can prove that there's criminal negligence on the perpetrator's part, then she would be cleared of all charges because of mind control. And so all we did say was we have evidence that can prove her innocence. That's all we had said. And they told us not to come back.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
That is.
So this has gone very, very far. And we went in, and the attorney is a criminal defense attorney. So, of course, he would want those cases. That's why this has gone into the judicial system. If you watch 60 Minutes mind reading, they even state that this is finding its way into the court system. I even was told by a prosecuting attorney to sue the state of Washington. So they're very aware of all of the events that are taking place and the technologies that are being used.
So on the professional level, it's acknowledged, it's known. It's just one of those things that it's not spoken about because there's really not a handful of facts for someone to put forward, is there?
Well, it's funny because I spoke to somebody and they said, well, how would somebody investigate these incidents? Well, if you have names, you give the names and you can follow the money trail. And so when your perpetrators are obstructing your justice, basically by contacting the people that you end up contacting and either threatening them or in the case of a judicial, if you think about an attorney situation, if they contact an attorney, they will tell the attorney, the person's crazy. They'll try to discredit you. But that should be a warning. That should be right there. How would they know that you even contacted them in the first place? Or they give them the opportunity to use these technologies to obtain information, personal private information about their, for legal reasons. So if they're wanting to present a case against somebody, they can use these technologies to gather information about either the state or whatever. So they're either giving them an opportunity to use these technologies illegally for information gathering, or they're paying them, or they're telling them, threatening them not to use it, or because you could bankrupt the state of Washington or the federal government. It just when you think about all of the injustices, it makes sense.
Yeah, it sure does. And gentlemen, we're heading to the bottom half of this hour here, and we only have about another 10 minutes for the segment of the show, including the guests. One by one, if I could start with you, Derrick, can you just let us know quickly where people could find the organization? I will be listing the link to your website on our channel here and in our chat room.
On top of the link we're also going to put, but Derrick, I also want you to give a message to all the listeners out there who are listening right now, what they can do to help.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The most important thing that we are trying to convey to the public is that these mind control technologies are in proliferation at this time, that a lot of the symptoms that you may be experiencing physically might be because you are being targeted. If you're hearing voices, it's not because, it may not be because that you have a mental illness. It could be because of these technologies that have the ability to present the human voice into someone's mind. We're hoping that we could get more of the public involved in this awareness process so that we can seek answers so that we can seek solutions, so that we can demand from Congress that these technologies be banned from use, and we're hoping for a congressional investigation so that the perpetrators, probably the intelligence agencies, would be caught and made to stop from targeting citizens. All those who are being targeted need to come forth. We need a platform where we can present our issues publicly and have the technologies and the targeting abuse recognized, and hopefully some of the perpetrators caught and imprisoned, hopefully, so that this does not happen to other people, and so that we, as a nation, will be free of this. Right now, it is definitely undercover. The information is being suppressed, and many are being victimized. The forced mental hospitalizations are happening, and people are being stigmatized with paranoid schizophrenia, so that people would not believe what they have to say. So all of this has to be, it's because of a giant conspiracy between the mental health industry, the pharmaceutical industry, and the Defense Department. All of these agencies working together have kept this racket going at the expense of the general public, who are non-consensual victims in this with mind control technologies. And we're hoping to bring all of this to light so that people will be freed from this matrix.
We just had someone in the chat room. They're asking a question, and we were just addressing it. But the question is, who does one contact if they're hearing voices? And I just posted the website, which I'm going to do again. But they could contact your website if they're hearing voices in regards to these topics, correct?
Correct. They can contact our website, and someone will get back to them. They really should not report this to the police, or they would be at risk of being escorted to a psychiatric facility. There's really nowhere else that at this time where this activity can be reported.
And one more time, the website, freedomfchs.com, freedomfch.com.
It's posted here on freedomslips.com in the chat, and I will be including that on R.O.A.M's Facebook page as well as my private site. And,
another point is, it's not just about also hearing voices. It could be other things. Remember, these technologies are being used for subliminal messaging. In fact, there's 92 neuromarketing companies that are out in the world, and they're using information, brain scans, and they can perform a brain scan remotely now for information gathering and for advertising. So when you walk into a grocery store or a department store or McDonald's, in fact, there was a great report out from Sonoma State University. They're a technical university, accredited university, and they even say that Walmart's been using these technologies in their stores. Nordstrom's there was something about Nordstrom's capturing images of people shopping, and that when you walked into one of their stores, they were actually monitoring people's shopping activities. And so this has been made very well aware. And in one of the Washington Times reports, it even states that with Alexis, it states that they're able to use an extremely low frequency to give somebody a hint or an idea to maybe purchase something. It's neuromarketing. So it's not just about hearing voices. You could be hearing low hums, ringing in the ears, frequencies. You could be maybe hearing somebody outside, and you're thinking that there's somebody outside, and you're constantly looking around outside. It's to create, basically, to get you scared or paranoid, even though you're not paranoid. But I don't even want to say paranoid, but to get you more aware of your surroundings. So it's not just always about hearing voices. There's other things that they are using as well. You're emotional. If you find that you become emotional, remember there's patents that the technologies are able to control your moods. So you may be happy one day in 1 minute, and the next minute you may not be happy. So they're able to warm up your body temperature, which changes your mood. So there's so many other aspects to this that people need to be aware of, that it's especially, if you're not a woman and you're not going through menopause, if you have experienced that 1 minute you're starting to sweat and you're not taking medications, you're not doing anything, and then the next minute you're experiencing chills, or you get dizzy, you get lightheaded, you get a major headache, ringing in the ears. There's a whole questionnaire on the Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance website that you can fill out, and it asks all of the symptoms that you're experiencing. And it's a great tool for you to understand that it's not just about hearing voices; it's about everything else.
Well, that's true. The technology can produce a variety of symptoms, and it can produce reproduce any condition in the human body that most of us are aware of. Anything from like heart attacks to strokes, even cancers, breathing problems.
And I have all three. I have all three. I had a heart attack, I had a stroke, and I have a testicular tumor from all these technologies being used. So I've been through the gamut.
All of these technologies can produce all of these human conditions. And actually, we have a British military scientist that has been working with us, and he actually has a list of frequencies with their corresponding human effects on the body, so that certain frequencies that they send to your system can produce certain corresponding effects.
One thing I hear is that the whole reason is for population control. There's a scribe somewhere written in Georgia which says the Earth is only populable by 500 million people, and it could be sustained that way. Do you think that's what links it?
Well, that's one theory. That's one theory. A lot of the other theory, again, is 70% of the population is on medications, and they're on medications for a reason. If you look at the microwave auditory effect, the studies, if you go to BigBrotherWatchingUs.com, click on patents, and then scroll down halfway down the page, and you'll see where it says microwave auditory effect congruent with schizophrenia. If you read it in the HTML form, it will even show you everything that this does. It causes ocular disease. It causes lipid changes. So you can be put on cholesterol medication. You can get diabetes. So a lot of this could be used for, again, to put people on pharmaceuticals. So it just there's so many, and then the cancers. You have to understand, I have a patient that's in his late 70s that was just diagnosed with leukemia. We billed his medication for him, cancer, and it's a form of cancer. And the cancer medications are extremely expensive. His cancer medication was $8,936 for 1 month for a 30-day supply. Now, the University of Washington, there's a bioengineer that was working with an ancient Chinese herb for cancer treatment. And leukemia was one of them, and it was very successful. And it's called artemisinin, and it's from the wormwood plant, and it's only 75 cents per capsule. Now, you think about it. Do you think the pharmaceutical companies are going to want that to actually be released for that reason? No. Not when they're getting $8,936 for a 30-day supply for cancer medication. It's very profitable. And I even spoke with a Snohomish. I was in touch with a Snohomish County sheriff, and we had been working with him, reporting things, and he said that this is way too big. It's hard to tackle. He said there's about 50 million people that are involved. So he knows about it, and law enforcement knows about it. It's just that people are scared. People are scared that they're, especially with the directed energy weapons that are being used to give you a heart attack, to give you a stroke, to give you aneurysms, to knock you down. These technologies can actually physically knock you over. So a lot of people are scared in law enforcement to even pursue an investigation. And it's unfortunate. That's why we had to go outside of the United States to the United Nations to get our case heard.
All right, gentlemen.
Okay, well, John, if I can add one more comment here.
Please do.
We have received complaints from people all across the globe, from Europe, from Asia, from Africa, Australia, New Zealand, with similar complaints that we are suffering. These technologies have evidently been exported to all of these countries. Back in the 1980s, Dr. Ross Addy was able to acquire from the Russians a mind control device. It was a primitive form of a mind control device by today's standards. It was called the LIDA machine. And it could hypnotize a person at close range. It also produced sound and light. This was one of the Russian machines that was, it was an obsolete form that was given to him. Now, 40 years later, they probably can do, many more things than hypnotizing a person and mind controlling a person and giving subliminal suggestions. But the point is that this is a global agenda and that millions of people are being affected by these technologies, and that there is an agenda of some type. Whatever it is, it's coordinated and it is heinous, and it is very imperative that the American people, that globally people recognize that these technologies exist and that the intent is population control, mind control. So this is an agenda that is happening right here and right now. It's not science fiction. It's happening right today.
All right, gentlemen, before I bring it to an end, and I really don't want to, you have been fantastic guests. The chat room has been busy all night. A lot of people are enjoying the program, as am I. There's been one person, so several questions have been asked, but one person has a really good question. And it was several wrapped into one. They had mentioned, what do you do if you're hearing a little how do you get the chit chat to stop in your head? And it was immediately followed by, we're hearing a lot of buzzing and humming noises. It was right before you had even mentioned the humming noises. And this person, just like I'm sure there are others out there, would like to reach out to you. Or reach out for some assistance to get assurities and get some answers. However, what do we do with the people that are or very cautious and nervous about drawing a lot of attention to themselves in regards to how does one know you're safe to contact in regards for help?
Okay, well,
I have someone who is, I'm assuming wants to reach out, but how can they do so?
Okay, we do have an 800 number that they can call. It's 1-800-571-5618. It's a message number at this time where people can call and leave a message, and we'll get back to them. But it is an outlet for those who are suffering. And for this particular situation, there's no other help that we know of. The agencies are not listening. Congress is not listening. The FBI will not help. The police will. You run the risk of being escorted to a psychiatric facility if you contact them about this. So at this time, we are here to help. The more people that we can gather to work on solutions, the easier and quicker the solutions will come.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us tonight. Mr. Derrick Robinson, and we have Tarek joining us. Folks, we're going to be posting all the information for our guests and all the contact info and all the research that you can do. And we really would like everyone to check out their sites, educate yourselves a little more in hopes of educating others. This is a message that needs to be spread on, and this is why we're here on Revolution Radio and Freedom Slips. We are delivering the truth and the answers that you're not going to find on mainstream media. And what these gentlemen are telling you is what's happening today, right now, And I highly recommend you doing a little bit of research yourselves. It's always the safest way. And
the other good site is synthetictelepathy.com.
excellent.
Click on all the links. It'll give you targeted individual statistics. It will give you all kinds of it'll answer a lot of questions that you may have about these technologies being used. Synthetictelepathy.com is a good resource as well. Thank you very much. I appreciate you inviting me.
Thank you, Tarek.
Always.
Thank
We
you for
will
joining
have
us,
you
and we
back.
hope to have you back. We really do.
Absolutely.
Mr. Robinson, it's been a pleasure having you. I hope you will also join us again in the future.
Okay, hope to.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Have a great
Have a good night. You bet. Thank you.
So, John.
Yes.
Another interesting show.
It was. It just touches one of those areas it's a gray area, but it was a great show because they're very knowledgeable. They have a organization that deals with this, so it was really good.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and as we know, this is a worldwide situation, and it's not isolated. It's completely random, and I do urge everyone out there, just pay a little more attention to yourselves. A lot of these symptoms are very regular symptoms, but when combined all together, it's a little more than that. A lot of these symptoms are pinpricks in various places of your body. Just all of a sudden, you just feel you're absolutely fatigued out of nowhere. Just as they say on their site, just drop in your tracks fatigue. Forced speech. Of course, if you're speaking words that you weren't intending on speaking and you're not allocating that to a few too many cocktails, well, then you might want to start paying attention. Pay attention to yourself. Pay attention to your body. Pay attention to your mind. You know all the answers in yourself. You just have to pay attention. It goes back to day one in Greek philosophy 101, know thyself. And that's where it all begins. You can find all the answers right there. You just got to pay attention to yourself. With that said, John, I am ready to rock and roll and discuss what we have coming on in the next week, in the weeks to come, and where we are. I just wanted to mention to everyone before we step on, we have a gentleman joining us next Sunday night here at 10 p.m. in Studio B. His name is Al Santariga. Hopefully we will be speaking on many topics. He's a very knowledgeable person. He's had many experiences with many phases of the paranormal, and most recently, I know he was. I'm pretty sure he was leading this event. If he wasn't leading it, he was one of the organizers of the event. But I know he has stepped up and he was out on a Bigfoot hunt this weekend. So Al's well-rounded. He's going to speak on many aspects of the paranormal and direct involvement and possibly how they all correspond and affect each other.
Bringing up Bigfoot brought me a great story. I was watching this documentary, and this ties in Bigfoot to UFOs. Okay, what they saw – let me back up first.
Yeah, lay it on me.
A few years ago, there was a theory that Bigfoot was an ET because he was only there, temporarily and then left. And their sightings were there, the footprints were there, but they weren't as much as seeing flying saucers. Well, one night, this couple or this family who lived in the woods, what they saw, multiple times they saw this, creature. One time it was looking through their window, which was 8 feet high, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then they got scared, and then finally they went outside to see it. They saw it walking in the distance, and right above it came a triangular craft and beamed a light of it on it, and it disintegrated. Yeah. Implying that it actually went into the craft. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was really crazy because and then another theory is that they're interdimensional. So I don't know, but the thing is, we got the skunk ape in Florida.
Yeah.
We got the mountain yeti in the what is it? The tallest mountain
In the
world.
Himalayas.
Himalayas.
Yeah.
Okay, we have Bigfoot here. There's so many, and they're all similar. Footprints can't be denied. Yes, there's hoaxers. Don't get me wrong, but when things are seen so much, I don't think hoaxes can be the explanation.
Well, you mentioned interdimensional. That's the hot topic with UFOs too, that they're interdimensional.
It not only is it a hot topic, it was one of the original topics. Let me tell you why. Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who actually is what inspired my name of Dr. J. Andy Ilias, was a Project Blue Book civilian lead. And he was tasked by the Air Force, I believe, from 1947 to 1969 to investigate UFOs. Well, the best cases were never kept from him, but he was the one that was famous for coming up with the swamp gas explanation.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and obviously that didn't earn him too much fame, but over the 22 years, he became a believer because he said there just cannot be this much happening and so many credible people, pilots, military men, everything. And remember, he was just getting the bottom of the barrel. And I think it was around 7 to 20% that was unexplained, or some were not enough information. But there were some cases, especially the Socorro 1964 New Mexico case, where a police officer observed an egg-shaped craft with two small men in white overalls, like really small children, and with markings on it. And as soon as he saw it and they saw him, they panicked, got in the craft, and they took off. Dr. J. Allen Hynek was on the scene right away with the U.S. Air Force, and there were burn marks of the flame that came out. There were impressions, the 3 impressions of the 3 legs. So that's just one of them. But the point being is at the end he said, well, why would they be extraterrestrials? Would they be coming from other planets and coming here for a split second and leaving? He said, no, more than likely they're interdimensional. That way they skip or jump, it was his word, from one dimension to the other.
In theory, it's pretty good. It's understandable that we could grasp that. I mean, that explains how we never find it while we're looking for it.
At the same time,
John, I don't mean to cut you off, but Noodles in the chat room has brought up a very good point. And it's a very good point because this is exactly how I felt at the time.
Hi, Noodles.
Noodles mentions, here's how it goes. Did anyone ever make the connection when they first watched Star Wars between Chewbacca and Bigfoot? And I did too, because this thing clearly looked like all the descriptions of everything I was hearing about a Bigfoot when I was younger. And Chewbacca's clearly from a far off land.
Do you know, I am sad and ashamed to say that I have never seen any of the Star Wars.
Folks, the show is over. Dr. J has left the building. That's incredible.
But I know who Chewbacca is.
Well, of course, you have to know who Chewbacca is.
Of course. I've seen Halloween costumes. I've heard people talking about them, Anyway.
So you've never seen any of the Star Wars?
Any of them. Actually, the only one I saw was Episode 1, so the more recent ones, and it sucks so bad I never saw any of them. So no, I never saw any of the 70s and 80s movies.
Okay.
The real ones.
Okay, all right. Well, folks, I'm really happy that we're actually discussing this topic, not John's lack of sci-fi history when it comes to the film arts. But, John and I were discussing before the show It's a topic that we're interested in, but we really haven't done any of our own research. So we're kind of putting it out there in hopes that we could bring forward someone who can add onto this conversation on a future show. Of course, we want to discuss the topic of giants. Not doesn't have to necessarily be Anunnaki. It doesn't have to necessarily be the Nephilim, but just giants overall.
Well,
I know through the Renaissance periods, if we were to speak the Dark Ages right through the 1500s, I could tell you a half a dozen very good accounts of large bodies, from 8 to 10 feet tall. These
8 to 10 feet tall is what was here. But my good friend Dr. Roger Lear, the alien implant doctor, he gave me a DVD, Watchers 6, and in that DVD, there was newspaper articles going back to the 1850s, 1860s, 1901, 1910, everything before World War One, and it showed, when technology got better and they had the actual photographs, but it told of these giant skeletons, especially found in Peru and other places.
Right. Those are the ones that we have to pay attention to because, sometimes we hear, for instance, a quick example. There's giants in our history, recent history, last few hundred years or 1,000 years. There's a whole bunch of them. And, this was a time when overall people's average height was a little bit smaller than they are now, quite drastically, actually. The story of Little John, from Robin Hood.
Little John and Robin Hood.
We dug him up. We exhumed his body just in the last decade, and that gentleman was just a hair over 7 foot tall. So when we talk about Peru and South America, they really didn't have that European race, that lineage that could have just been a little bit taller. These overall were much shorter people. Especially in that time, there shouldn't be any traces of anything over 6 or 7 foot in Southern America.
And, let me tell you one more thing. I think it's, King David versus the giant or something in the Bible?
Yeah, David and Goliath.
Goliath,
yeah.
Okay.
Goliath and his brothers.
The point being is people look at everything as mythology. Why don't people look at what people really saw and described what they saw? And in this case, they saw a giant man and a short man, and same thing with the gods, same thing with, the Greek gods, the Roman gods, the Egyptian gods. They were describing something that they knew in their terms. And now that we turn it to mythology, I mean, how can that be right?
You're right on. You're right on. There's a famous story of in the city of Antwerp that they have a lot. Actually, the city's name Antwerp is from an older religion that means a large human. So the city's name is founded upon it, and it was written by a good historian that they had this giant's body in the city of Antwerp for years, for hundreds of years, and it was well documented, and it was written down to be known that the Holy Roman Emperor at the time, in I guess in about the 1530s, late 1520s, that Emperor Maximilian had acquired that body, and he had it in his possession. So it was known at the time, and I found it quite interesting in some research I was doing that was not directly corresponded to this, that the famous the Northern Renaissance artist Albrecht Dürer, he had made a trip in the 1520s going to the Netherlands. He was going to see for whatever reason, a body of a beached whale, and he was making a trip from Nuremberg, Germany, to the Netherlands to see this beached whale. And along the way, he made two big stops. One was to see a king and do some art for him and his family. And the other stop was Antwerp, Germany. And he wrote in his journal, which he really didn't keep many records of his journals, but this record exists that he did see this giant. He wrote all about it. He wrote that it was almost 15 feet tall. He saw where it slept. And this is a man who had gone to Italy and met with Leonardo da Vinci, and he was very good friends with Raphael. And I mentioned da Vinci because at the time when he met da Vinci, him and da Vinci, Dürer and da Vinci, were both studying human anatomy and proportions and perspective. And like I said, he was going to see a whale. So this was a man who was familiar with human anatomy, familiar with the other animals in the animal kingdom. And what's odd enough is at this time when Albert Dürer made this trek, his employer was the Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian, who surely enough ended up with this body, as history tells us. So it's quite possible Albert Dürer returned and most likely he drew it for the emperor because he drew everything. If he didn't feel well, he drew himself and he drew where he wasn't feeling well and he sent it off to a doctor. So, there's so many really good accounts, John. And there's one here that I further read into, and it was in France. There was several in the late 1800s that were found. And before the show ends, I want to quickly point out this doctor here was from a major university in France, and he was the head anthropologist. And here he wanted to make it very clear. And I quote, "I think it's unnecessary to note that these bones are undeniably human, despite their enormous size and their cylindrical shape and the measurements, that these belong to a taller race of humans." And these are quotes. And this body was 11 and a half feet tall. And he says they're undeniably human. And the heads of these things were enormous. I mean, the skulls, listen to this. The skull of this 11 and a half foot tall being was 29 inches in circumference. And that's not even it. They have other ones from France that dug up in the same grave. What it was, they were digging up like a burial mound, and these giants were on the bottom of this mound. And some of the other heads were 31 inches, 32 inches in circumference. There was scattered remains on some of them. They might have been up to 15 feet.
I've seen some in Egypt, pictures of literally before World War I, where they're standing by to a head that looks literally like 2/3 of their body, and they're estimating like 9.8 meters, or they measured it because they had a measure. But that's the true phenomenon. Now, don't get me wrong. People exaggerate, but at the same time, I don't think all